Welcome back to Together We Can's monthly action items. My name is Rob Crane. I'm a personal injury attorney in Dallas, Texas, and along with my friend Pastor Richie Butler, we are co-founders of Together We Can. This month, we focus in on Women's History Month, which is celebrated here in America as well as a couple of other countries in March. This year's theme is Break the Bias, and we've got a twofold purpose with our action items this month. We go back into the right to vote, and in particular, the struggle for African American women and their journey to get that right to vote. Ida B. Wells and so many trailblazers who led the way, who worked with black men, white and black women who didn't always agree. And in fact, you'll see in our entries some very historical divergences from these various groups as they were working for this right to vote, ultimately leading to the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920. And though it did provide in writing this right to vote, that's not what occurred in America. As we all know, after many of these types of monumental changes, laws were enacted to subvert those changes. And Jim Crow laws were a large part of our history during this time. And laws were enacted such as poll taxes and literacy tests and grandfather clauses. A grandfather clause meaning if your grandfather did not vote, then you cannot vote, as well as the continuation of violence and the denial of citizenship. All of these things were used to prevent people of color and women of color from having that right to vote. And so we focus in on this journey, we focus in on this fight, and it leads up and until the mid-1960s with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was passed to prevent the state-passed laws from subverting the intention of the 19th Amendment. But we do note that there continues to be an effort to suppress certain votes in this country, and it will be part of our constant journey and awareness of making sure we fortify that promise to all American citizens that they have the right to vote. And as we look at this, we take note of a lesson that we highlighted last month as well when we looked at the decision of Brown versus the Board of Education, which in 1954, just 68 years ago, outlawed that justification for segregation, that justification of separate but equal. The Supreme Court saying, no, that is inherently unequal. That was just a generation or so ago, as is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, where just decades ago, we are for the first time giving promise or fulfilling our promise to those people who had been denied the right to vote through various means and laws since the inception of our country. So we need to recognize and be aware of what our history is, appreciate the recency of these monumental changes in our country for the better, celebrate that growth in our country, and help each other along this journey so that we help each other recognize that it's not been that long ago, and that just because 9 white men on the Supreme Court in 1954 signed a legal opinion doesn't mean it changes the hearts and minds of the people in the country. And the same thing with the Civil Rights Act of 1965. Just because President Johnson signs that bill into law doesn't mean overnight the hearts and minds of people in this country are going to change overnight, and that we are still on a recent journey of just a few decades ago making these monumental changes, and we are all part of the process of changing the hearts and minds of those friends and family and neighbors who have not been given the education, given the awareness of where we are in our journey as a country. And so it is upon us all to make sure that we fulfill that promise by helping each other along our path. And again, something to be celebrated, that we live up to that ideal of all men and women being created equal. And then this month, as noted, we get back into Women's History Month and the theme of Break the Bias, and looking at some of the more technical aspects and a little deeper dive into biases in our country. An entry, End Adultification Bias, submitted by Georgetown Law Center, really gets into the experiences of Black girls and women in America and backs it up with data to help people like me who have a different walk in this country understand what it's like, more like, to be in their shoes. I will never fully be able to understand it, but I can try to understand and have a better appreciation for their journey. Then Gender Shades, an entry from Joy Buolamwini. I hope I got that right. She is a remarkable student at MIT, has given TED Talks, and on her thesis, looking at technology today and the facial recognition technology, the AI technology that is becoming more and more prevalent in our world. And she looked into the biases that are inherent in our current state of technology, which is part of the awareness that we need to obtain in this country as we create these brand new technologies and make sure we do our best to unroot biases that may be initially injected into these new platforms. So an important concept to be aware of, and really appreciate that hard work she did at MIT. And then we have an entry from Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, professor at Columbia and UCLA, who for decades has been fighting for civil rights and is a deep thinker. She is the creator of intersectionality theory, where she really gets into the nuances of the different identities that we all have. Myself as a white person, as a male in this country, and she, in her entry this month, takes a conversation into the journey of African American females and that intersectionality of discriminations that they face on different levels, as both a woman and an African American woman. So an important appreciation to understand from Professor Crenshaw, and something that allows all of us to take with us and move forward, knowing a little bit better about the walk of somebody that may not look like us or walk in the same shoes as us. So a lot of important entries this month, a deeper dive, somewhat heavier at times, but so much information that is important for all of us that we can take with us, share with others, and make our places of work, make our institutions, make our technology even better, so that we live up to that ideal of all men and women being treated equally in this great country of ours. We hope you enjoyed this month's entries, and we look forward to seeing you next month.